Welcome back to the Elevate Your Best podcast. My name is Michael Danklefs.
And I am Bruno Martins. And today we're going to talk about the importance of relaxation.
In this day and age when it's all about the try, the do, the hustle, all that kind of stuff, we've tapped a little bit about this idea of relaxation or recovery when we talked a little bit about flow. And where this kind of comes up, especially since as we're recording this right now, this is the weekend in the United States that is the Thanksgiving weekend. It's when we slow down to be grateful and be thankful for the things we have in our life. And that relaxation is really important, because when we're always up against it and we're always riding hard on the things that we're doing, it's almost like we're going so fast we don't slow down to see how things are all connected. So I know that whenever I tend to go, which I still do on a irregular basis of being stressed out all the time because I've got that deadline to meet, I've got that project to finish, I've got that book to read, all that kind of stuff. If it's always the go, we never slow down to actually take stock of how far we've come. And we also don't take time to recover and to relax. Like I said, for those of us in the United States, this is that time to slow down, spend time with family, to be grateful, to share that thankfulness with others. And for some of us, many of us, that's with family, that's with close friends. So I guess I'm curious for you, Bruno, is when do you make that time? When do you make that time to relax?
You know, Michael, you got me there. I really need to work on that because I don't usually take time to relax. And now I have a business partner here, and he was even telling me that I need that. He was talking about going to the beach with his girlfriend and telling me that I need that because I'm always like, there's a word like, I'm always on the edge, putting things forward and getting upset, easily stressed. And he was like, dude, you gotta go to the beach, take your girlfriend, do something. And it's important. I don't have the habit of it, but now that we are covering the life book and I'm getting more aware of the 12 areas of our lives, I'm starting to put more time in attention, awareness into those areas, and quality of life, relaxation, it's coming to me as a priority. That I before, it's not like I didn't knew it was important. It was more like I have more important things to do. I'll do that later. And now I'm getting aware that we need to plan our lives, our routines in a way that those things are always present in every day.
Absolutely. And this idea we can always get more done. There's plenty more time to get done. And my tendency is what I tend to sacrifice to get more done is sleep, which is this thing of cutting off the tail of the snake so we can get further along, is that the less sleep I get, the more effective I am. But hey, I've got to meet that deadline because we always need to get that next thing done. Though that just daily ritual of going and sleeping for a full night has such an impact on the choices I'm making, around the actions I'm taking, and the insight and creativity that shows up. I also know that when I tend to come up against the not doing these self-care routines is that I tend to get into a rut more often, is that I keep doing the same solutions over and over again, which sometimes is awesome, knowing that when this comes up, that this is my solution for it. But how then do we find the next solution if we're only running on autopilot and we're just bringing out the script from last year or a decade ago or 20 years ago of how we solve that problem? When we slow down and get in that space of relaxation, we can realize that, oh, here's the challenge that keeps coming up. I keep having to solve this problem. Why don't I solve it at the source? And that's when we can do reflection, recovery, and relaxation is when those things can come up.
Yeah. And being stressed out all the time, like I was mentioning and you just touched on as well, consumes a lot of our energies. And if we don't take the time to rest, it is so important. I fail a lot with resting as well. Sometimes I go to sleep very late and then I have to wake up and it's not very good. What I realize is that this is one of those things that we don't actually notice because we are running after producing more, getting more done. There are so many things that we see as priorities. And we don't have usually an environment around ourselves that tells to our body, hey, now it's time to relax, now it's time to produce. And it kinds of blurs everything, and our body keeps receiving signals that it needs to produce. For example, in my kitchen net, my bed is right in front of my computer. So the same environment that I need to rest is the environment where I need to produce. So there is a conflict there because my mind doesn't get the message that, oh, now he's in this environment. And in this environment, he only rests. So he doesn't receive this signal. It's that thing that we always tell in the podcast. It's understanding our body, our collective being, and on the way that it is, and giving it the time to recover. Because what I just touched and I didn't actually mention is that the things that we don't notice, one of the things that we don't notice is how this lack of relaxation, and now we are talking about broader relaxations in our lives. Later, I think that we will talk about relaxation in the moment. But when this resting is not present, we don't notice how many decisions we do that are like not at our best, or not so sharp, or not so good. And as Michael just mentioned, we tend to be making the same decisions because our mind is without energy. It's all about energy, the transmutation of energy inside our body, the energy that we have to do everything. And when we don't manage very well this energy, we tend to be limited in our options of what we can see and what we can do, because thinking in new solutions, thinking in new scenarios that work and can actually be applied in our lives to benefit ourselves requires a lot of energy.
Absolutely. And that reminds me when we talked about the 4 agreements, when we actually have this agreement of this is how I'm going to respond to this. So it is certainly a drain on our energy. And a lot of what we talked about in the 4 agreements when we covered those was as we let go of agreements that don't serve us anymore, it frees up energy so we can then do other things. It frees up psychic energy. It frees up our willpower. It frees up so much availability for us to then move into the things that we want to go to. When we can start rewriting that story of why we do things, it then frees us up with the availability to grow and solve the original problem, the original trigger, the original diagnosis, to diagnose exactly what the problem is, rather than having to have this consistent response to the symptoms. We're taking care of symptoms rather than the initial cause. So when we're actually in many ways, we're ignoring all those causes because we're so busy chasing after the symptoms. So it's another benefit of us slowing down into relaxation is we can step away from the problem. We can step away from that part that we're challenged with and maybe see when it comes up, what are we doing to create it? How can we solve or resolve whatever the core issue is there? And not always will we find that for sure, but it's if we never slow down to take a look at it, it's going to be near impossible for us to solve it.
And here in this, because we are people that follow us, they are aware that I am opening a small business here in Brazil, and it's been a challenge, lots of lessons. And while we were running after this, one of the friends that came here to help one day, he was like, I was mentioning that in the beginning, we were not so aware of everything that was required to do. So it was finding out things and planning in order to know exactly how best approach the situation. And it took a little bit of time. And he mentioned something like, yes, because you are inside of the problem. And we come here, we see a few things, it's good because they were talking some things, shedding some lights. And he was like, but we are outside the problem. We can see things that perhaps you can't see. And that's the thing we talk about the coach, the importance of the coach is also giving this outside perspective and helping us into learning how to do it ourselves, how to get away from the problem, take a moment, like relaxing our minds, being mindful of our emotions, seeing if our emotions are okay or if there is something disturbing us, taking deep breaths and tapping into this relaxation that we will talk about later, as I mentioned, how to do that, how to go inside this moment of relaxation, how to exercise it actually, because it's an ability that we need to exercise. And then seeing the problem and starting to change perspectives, to see it in different angles and check if there are any informations or any way to approach the situation that we were not expecting, we were not aware of. And another thing that I believe that can help us into getting more done, because sometimes we want to get so much done that we end up spreading ourselves too thin. But the thing is, what can help us get more done is that all those decisions, remember when we spoke about decisions, that when we are low on energy, we keep making the same decisions. Those decisions, they were made at some point. We don't actually remember, but they were made at some point, and we can change those decisions. And we can create a system that it's more productive, get more things done, like a setup, and then it saves more energy for us. Does it make sense what I'm talking about?
I think what I hear you saying is that there's the capability for us to work on the systems that we have in place that can move us forward. There's a difference between falling back to our automation, our scripting, versus intentionally setting what framework we're doing, intentionally setting up how we're going to move from here to there, and doing that so we're focusing on then the core problem, the core cause, rather than solving the solution, solving the symptoms. And when we're actually up in it, we think that the symptoms is the core problem, and most of the time that's not the case, and really a matter of being able to step back from whatever it is that we're up against, so we can actually then potentially get more input elsewhere, get that new perspective, so we can actually see it from more of an outside. And it's one step towards finding better solutions for this, for sure, is being able to take the step back. So, go ahead.
I have just something to add on that. And here's the thing. It's like you said, Michael, the thing about the system is that it's usually not intentional. That's what I wanted to say. We already talked about this, about the hidden agreements. You mentioned the 4 agreements. And sometimes these agreements, these systems, these pre-made decisions that we just act upon, it's unintentional. It came from our culture scape. It came from our peers, from our families. It came from experience, a traumatic experience that we might have had, that just sends us the message that this is something bad. We should not do that. And then we start to make those decisions. And in the moment of action, we don't actually notice that this decision, this experience is influencing this decision that we are making right now, because we might not even remember, but it's recorded on our subconscious mind, on the neural network that information goes through. And the point is remembering that we can plan the system. It's not easy, it's not something tangible, it takes time, but we can plan this system and we can improve. And the secret to planning, it's gradual incrementation, like small adjustments that we make when we see ourselves either doing a good decision that we wish to expand and do more. Pay attention, take a moment to relax and absorb that decision that we make, that course of action that we wish to act like that. And when we do a detrimental behavior, some negative behavior, in the moment, taking a time to recognize, oh, I act like this, it's not good, and why it's not good, just being mindful, and we can then be adjusting those things.
It's funny because as you're talking about this, it reminds me that each of the components, each of the core components of my coaching practice come back to taking time, taking a step back and prepare. Take a step back and decide what you're committing on. Take a step back and be held accountable to take the steps that you're doing And most importantly is that when you do make those decisions that are moving you towards where you want to go, celebrating your progress. Each of those does take this idea of taking a step back out of the action and into the relaxation. And is that slow down and be aware of the progress that you're making. It's pulling the car over and checking to make sure that you're actually still going towards where you originally intended on going, instead of just barreling on at 100 miles an hour down a highway that you have no idea where you're going.
Before it's too late, right? Before it's too late to come back. Sometimes you just go too far and then you notice, oh, I passed so much from the point.
Right, and then you miss your destination. So in a lot of this, a fair amount of what we have talked about on the podcast is about living your life more intentionally. If there is a system in place that is something that you've designed, you've engineered, you've set up for you to serve you, rather than taking on the systems that you were conditioned with when you were a kid, whenever you were a young adult. As Bruno attested to, is those traumatic experiences that you chose a particular way to address that, which may not serve you. Having a decision made when you are a 4 or 5-year-old isn't necessarily how I want to choose to respond to my life now. If I were to come up to a 5-year-old child right now and say, what would you choose? This to do in your life or that to do in your life? There may be some fantastic feedback there, but do I really want to be a person who leaves the outcome that I'm looking for, the results that I'm looking for, by the decision on someone who's been on the planet for 4 years, who's not been through either of those two experiences? And when we can discern that, tends not to be when we're running in that reptilian brain with that subconscious programming, because we're barreling down the road in order to keep ourselves from dying. It's a matter when you slow down and allow the rest of the connections in your brain, the rest of the neural network, to get engaged in a way that's actually going to support you to move forward. And it is really a matter of being so much up in that issue that we lose track of really sometimes why we're there in the first place. So that time of relaxation and a couple of the techniques that we'll talk about is going to be ways to get there. It's a matter of then bringing intention to your work.
And this time of relaxation, it doesn't need to be too much. For example, if I'm competing in Jiu-Jitsu, or if I'm just training, and then I'm like 5 minutes row, it's a fight. We call it row. A 5-minute row, it's very intense. But then we do 1, 2, 3 rows, 15 minutes of intense fighting. And then we stop, take 1, 2 minutes. Perhaps it's an entire fight, like 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes, they get us brand new to more 3, 4, maybe even 5 intense rows again. So it doesn't take much. It's a moment. It's a moment to relax, to think. Sometimes just a moment to just take a deep breath might make a big difference.
Yep. And it's funny because I tend to be using these 3 words interchangeably: relaxation and recovery. In the 10X program on Mindbell is a lot about fitness. It's a 10X fitness program. And one of the things that I really learned from that was that during a workout is not really when you're building muscle. You're actually weakening muscle during the workout. It's in recovery whenever you actually get stronger. So what you're doing for your sleep, for your nutrition, for your hydration, for your repair phase is really important. So as you're saying, between rows, that recovery time is really important, so then you can recharge and be able to move into the next set. And if you were to instead try to do 7 rows in a row, by the 3rd or 4th, you would actually be exhausted. And by the 5th or 6th, you'd be useless. And by the 6th or 7th, you're going to get injured. So how then do you make the 7th row more effective, and where you learn and where you grow? And that's by taking that relaxation step in the midst. That's a fantastic example for what we're talking about, is recover. Take that time to relax and recap and review and recover.
And this idea of we grow when we are resting. That's very good as well, Michael, because it goes much beyond the muscle fiber. We grow muscle fiber when we are resting, when we eat, after the training. We even feel some pain. It's like, I don't know how it works exactly, but I know that the body, it breaks somehow, gets some damage. The fibers, they break somehow and they need reconstruction. But this goes beyond, because if we think about how so many people like Thomas Edison, he used to sleep and put a ball of some steel, some iron, some metal, with some metal ball in his hand. And then when he was getting to sleep, there is a moment where we reach some frequency. And it's a great moment of intuition. It's a moment where people believe they receive messages from God. They might say that they receive knowledge from the infinite wisdom of the universe. There are many explanations. But the thing is that when we are going to sleep, there is this moment there. And when he got to sleep, he would relax his hand, the ball would fall on the bowl, and it would make a sound that would wake him up in order for him to take note. Because we forget, we have great ideas in the bathroom, we have great ideas while we are sleeping, and then we forget some nice solution for a problem that we have. And he would have the system to wake up and then take notes. And this relates to the resting as well. Because while our mind is resting, it's not sending input in. It's a great moment for our subconscious mind that is still working to actually think and wonder about the challenges. How is this collective being going to solve the challenges that is facing it? And sometimes the signals that we are sending in are just like assumptions and make up scenarios, daydreaming, and it consumes our energies. Our subconscious mind is not working towards our life vision. And that's why we need to have some sort of hygiene, what we are putting in, not making assumptions, not considering scenarios that are just like fantasy. We can plan for the future, but on an orderly fashion, because there are things working inside of us that we might not understand exactly. And this might be a great superpower or a great drain of energy that we go to rest. And when we wake up, it doesn't feel like we got some recovery.
So a lot of what you're mentioning there is the idea of adaptation. So when we actually push ourselves to a certain limit, we're giving a signal to our body that it's important to be able to do this. And our body responds by adapting. There's a fuller term for that, but it's that adaptation principle that we as human beings actually are fairly good at for the most part. We see patterns and we adjust accordingly. We adapt to that new environment. That's a lot what our muscles are doing, but it's also, like you said, our thoughts as well. When we've said, this is important for me to overcome, we're then programming our subconscious to say, let's find new solutions to this. Let's actually recover stronger than the way that we actually just responded to that situation. In the 10X program, they talk about that idea of being chased by the lion. And if you actually survive being chased by the lion by climbing up that tree, that when you're recovering, your body's, okay, we just barely survived that time. Let's actually make sure we really survive the next time, so it's not a problem anymore. So your body then adapts to be able to have a bigger burst of speed, so you can jump higher, so you can climb faster. And the same thing is true for our thoughts. It's that idea of adaptation is really important for this, because that's how we evolve, that's how we grow. That is that growth model we're talking about. We're talking about a growth mindset. It's about that. And similar, whenever you look at Steve Kotler's work, when he talks about the habit of ferocity as an example, is push yourself to do harder things, so then you adapt to bring that level up. Because I believe it was one of the quotes we talked about in the past was this was a quote from the Navy SEALs, I believe, is that you never rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your practice. So if you're practicing doing hard things and that becomes your norm, that your bar keeps moving higher and higher as you adapt more and more. On the side of things for that kind of that mindset shift, that conceptualization, that creative and inspirational moment is, I believe, delta wave in our brain. Delta waves are produced when we're dreaming. So getting into that level of dream state that you were talking about with Thomas Edison, dropping into that. So then you're able to tap into that part of your conscious brain that is so creative and can connect ideas together that you wouldn't be able to normally do that. For many forms of meditation, that's the goal, is to get your brain into a delta wave frequency. So then you actually have those creative conceptualization and connecting the dots so quickly. And that is another way that we can really do relaxation. So today, obviously I'm going to be talking a lot about some of the Mind Valley quests, because one of the other ones that I really loved there was Emily Fletcher's The M Word, where she was teaching meditation. Number one thing, meditation practice is not to get good at meditation, is her perspective, is to get good at life. But also that meditation is an opportunity to allow your body to truly relax, because many times whenever you are sleeping, your brain is doing memory consolidation and your body is recovering. But during meditation is whenever you are really allowing recovery to happen for your body, because it's not having to do some of the other processes that you do when you're sleeping. It's also an opportunity for your brain to reconnect and recover differently than whenever you are doing your sleep practice, whenever you're actually getting that rest in the evening. So each of these is a way to get to that space of relaxation, to get to a space where you can be more creative and be more connected with your ideas, is really falling into that space of adaptation. And delta wave space is hugely beneficial for us when we're trying to overcome some of these problems. But when we're in alpha state, when we're actually in high impact active go mode, we block ourselves from getting into that creative space. Getting into that flow state also tends to be when we get into delta frequency in our brains. So there's quite a few practices that can get us there.
And why to exercise this? Because if we exercise this, we will not only be more mindful and be able to analyze more perspectives, but we'll be able to do sharper, better decisions on point. And this is something very cool, Michael. I do realize that I observe that I can make sharper decisions on point, much better and faster than other people. And sometimes people, they get impressed, like, you knew already exactly what, and sometimes I feel like it. There are some situations, some challenges, and I speak exactly the necessary thing for the things to move forward, the situation to move forward, and get in a nice scenario. And it's because of that, I believe that I have, because of the exercise of meditation, it's not something special, it's something acquired. In the moment, it's like a superhero. For example, I saw Invincible, which is a series animation from Amazon Prime. And there is this guy, which is a Flash character. He's super fast. So you're probably aware of his quick skills. And he's talking to his girlfriend because he's something bad happening. And he goes there, solves the thing. And when he comes back, he forgets to take out his costume. And then he looks at him and she's, you promised me you'll not do that again. I can't entertain you for a single conversation. What's going on? What's the problem with you? And he's like explaining to her, calm down. It's not like that. I love you. And every moment that I spend with you is special. But before he says it's special, it's like, you need to understand that every moment that I have with other people is like an eternity. I perceive things so much, and they are like, they take so much time. When people are in the middle of the phrase, he already knows what is the completion because he's seeing that so slow. And of course, we are not the Flash. Of course, we can't have super speed. But when you exercise your perception, it's what you start to notice. It's like that. It's like you can react to things faster because you are noticing them before the others are starting to notice them. And this comes from relaxation, because in order to have this perspective, in order to be able to absorb all those things that is happening and to make a decision and act on cue, if it were like something natural, it comes from relaxation. Because if there is too much information, if there is too much noise, our minds get confused. And then when somebody puts us against the wall, puts us on the corner, we don't raise to the occasion, we fall to the level of our practice. And usually those are not good decisions that we make, are not very well educated. They are reactions probably to fear, because we learned that fear is a major force that is always pushing us, pressing the buttons of our need to survive.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because in that there's a physiological aspect of this too, of why relaxation is so important. And that is, as we're learning more and more about how our body works and our nervous system, is when we're in this fight, fly, freeze, or mode, there's a lot of things that actually shut down in the rest of our body. As in, when we're in that fight or flight mode, that sympathetic nervous system, our focus gets narrower, our certain parts of our brain actually get faster and other parts shut down. But at the same time, digestion slows down. Our heart rate changes, our ability to pick up sensory input actually increases. But it has such an impact on the rest of the way that our body works, that when we've got adrenaline, cortisol running through our body, we actually have damage happening to a fair amount of our body in that process, because we don't give ourselves that time to recover, to come back from that hard charge. And it's needing to slow down to get to that recovery phase, so we can then be prepared for the next time that this comes up, so that we can actually get into a space where we find relaxation, and where we find a new perspective too, and potentially where we're stepping away out of that situation. So part of this for me is actually either in my emotional state that I'm stuck somewhere, or with something I'm working with on my job, or even if I'm having a disagreement with someone, is sometimes it takes me stepping back, instead of being in the midst of that fight, is being able to step back and say, okay, I need to take some space. I'll be back in 5 minutes. That 5 minutes can make a world of difference in that conversation, to turn it into a fight versus into a collaboration. I've taken some space. This is more than just like a physical recovery thing. It's also a reducing the stress from that current situation, because in that state of stress, our reactions can be really good, if our practices match that. But if we come from this place of scarcity of time, energy, resources, we're going to be making different decisions than ever when we're stepping back and seeing all of the inventory that's available for us to bring to bear. So sometimes that is interacting with another person. Sometimes it is doing a little bit of research. Sometimes it's just disconnecting from that energy, disconnecting from that situation long enough to recap our thoughts.
And this is a key point that you just mentioned, Michael. Interrupting. It's pattern interrupt. Sometimes we come from a pattern of anxiety, a pattern of fear, a pattern of aggression, something like that. And we start to, first thing is understand and localize the pattern, identify that, and then we start to work on interrupting it. And just a moment, that's why I say a moment of deep breath. Just a moment of deep breath resets the system. So that emotional wave, that frequency that we were, it might be a pattern of aggression or something like that, a fear, anxiety, like a anxiety attack. I don't know if they call you like that, an anxiety attack, yeah? So like an anxiety attack, and then when it comes and we identify, the sooner we identify the trigger, the best thing to identify is the trigger. When the trigger comes, if we can get it from that beginning, we might just feel our feet on the floor, take a deep breath, and we are resetting the system. And that frequency it might not have this moment, a single deep breath might not be able to stop the frequency, but we'll start to change it. And perhaps we might need 5 minutes of deep breath relaxation, and then the pattern is interrupted, and then we can start a new pattern. That is something, Michael, I would like to come back to before we move forward on actually saying some techniques. I do have some techniques. I believe all of them I don't know if you have them listed, but we have practiced them all. But things that identified on programs, quests that are good to relaxation. But one thing that I wish to cover a bit before that is that idea of spreading ourselves too thin. Is that idea of spreading ourselves too thin? Because this is something that is so common, and those things that most people don't realize, they don't have awareness, we just don't notice, and it's crippling them. It's crippling us because it's a weight that we are carrying, and we think that is part of our body, but then we could just lift off that or keep it in a place stored right there because we are not using right now and move forward. Like, it is the idea of, in that idea of getting things done, we start too much tasks. We start too much things to do. And then I have something to clean and I go there, clean a little bit, but I don't finish because someone got to the door and I went to talk to them and they want me to go into their house to help with something. And then in the middle of the way, we find a new friend and we take 20 minutes to talk a little bit. And at the end of the day, we're like, oh, I'm so tired and I didn't get much done. And there is so little time in the day. I'm not very productive. How can I be more productive? And we don't realize that we are reacting to tasks that come to us. And our mother, our brother, sister, our partner might come to us and say, hey, you got to go into the market, buy something, or into the bakery, or can you please do this here for me on the internet? It's so quick, you can do that. But we were doing something, and because we want to please that person, we get that task, we started doing it, and we don't even notice, we don't even remember the task that we were doing before, and now we go to another task. And that first task is forgotten. So in order to not spread our self too thin, it is important to have in mind that the idea of delivery, iterations, delivering things. I learned that when I work with management, when I work with Kanban. The Kanban methodology has a phrase that says this: stop starting and start finishing. Stop starting tasks and start finishing them. Focus on finishing. If you have a lot of tasks, focus on finishing one. Organize them on a group or something. And it's much good as well if we group types of tasks, because if I go into the kitchen and there are some tasks to do in the kitchen, but I go into the kitchen, there are 5 tasks to do there and 3 tasks in the living room. And I go into the kitchen, I do a task, and then I go into the living room and I do another task, and then I go into the kitchen. It spreads myself too thin. Better focus on the kitchen, do everything that it has to do on the kitchen, treat it like a project, and now the kitchen is delivered. I have a deliverable results, like the kitchen is working. Now I go to the living room and I focus on the tasks of the living room. And this idea of delivering iterations, which are things that we deliver, that they make a difference.
I like how you covered a lot of that, and what I keep remembering amongst all of this is this idea of, you mentioned that we may start that task, but then we forget about it. Executive function, our conscious mind, it's not in queue, it's not up there. Our subconscious mind is still keeping inventory though. And that's why at the end of the day, that laundry list of the 12 things you started is still taking up space in your brain, still taking up cycles for your processor. And we feel exhausted because we weren't able to take any of those things off the list. It's like running 100 different browser windows on your computer. If you never finish the task and close the window, it's going to continue taking resources until it's done. So it's another way where when we do take a step back and take inventory of all the things that needed to be done, write them down, put all of those things on a list so that you actually can get them out of here so they stop taking up energy and space, and then start executing on them in exactly how you mentioned. I love how you talked about that. It's getting those things, not only that you've started them, but that you've also completed them, because then they stop taking up space. And when you group them together, you get more efficient, you get more proficient when you're doing similar tasks, when you're doing tasks in a similar space. That then if you did that alternating back and forth, the multitasking as people call it, it's going to take you twice as long. rather than when you're doing things in the same space, you're going to be more efficient because you've already got all the things out. So if you're going to cook for a week versus actually cooking, going to the store, buying your groceries, and then bringing it home, and then making your meal, and then doing that for 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, if that's how you're eating, how much time did you waste going to the market 21 times instead of going to the market maybe 3 times?
And that is very clear in my profession, for example, as a designer and now producing content. For example, if I have things to do in the video editor, one of these process might be right in the beginning of the content production, but then I have 2 other processes that are by the end, or maybe one that is in the middle, something like that. I'm not using the best example, but what I want to say is it's better for me to keep producing and leave this first process later, because then I will open that environment. It's like the kitchen. I will open the video editor and I do everything that I have to do on the video editor. And then I deliver. And then I need to do thumbnails and things like that. And I'll open Photoshop or maybe Canva. I don't know, the two. And then we save all those tasks, all those little tasks, to the moment that we open Photoshop. So when we open Photoshop, we get there, and when we get out, everything's done. So here's the thing. This idea that of raising ourselves to the level of the challenge, we don't raise ourselves to the level of the challenge, we fall to the level of our practice. And this is something that when I did the Habit of Ferocity quest, I got for myself, and I took to Jiu-Jitsu and make a big change, because I already gave a lot of myself, and I used to get tired focusing on doing better. But after that idea, I started like thinking, I want the level of my practice to be like top there. So I always give my best and do a lot, and I try to, I look for to raising the, what, imagine if, let me put this idea together. I want to be tired, extremely tired, and be an extremely dangerous foe. You understand? So that's the level of practice I'm looking for. I want to be, I'm tired. I already fought for the entire training, and then someone comes brand new and comes to fight with me. I want to be still dangerous. And this has to do with this idea of what can we accomplish if our comfort zone is just like top performance? What can we accomplish if in our practice, instead of taking soft with ourselves, getting soft with ourselves, not requiring so much, we just require like put ourselves out there and test our limits so far, our comfort zone then becomes so big, and it just engulfs so many things that then we get much more relaxed, because we are handling more information with ease in our practice, and then we can make sharper decisions and all those things that we are talking about. So the decision of raising the level of our standard practice, it has a great impact in our lives.
So in this idea of, and because I was going to ask you how you contrast the idea of always giving the best and raising that bar for yourself and raising your practice, and relaxation. It's that idea of knowing that you're going to race here, and then you're going to come back and relax, and you're going to race again, and you're going to come back and relax. It's something else that they talk about in a lot of the fitness work as well, is that yes, you could run for 4 hours and you will actually get these kind of results. You will actually burn calories while you're doing that. What they found is that when you're doing bursts to failure, you get a better response. When you actually, in the 10X program, and I'm summarizing this in probably too simple a terms here, so don't actually go off and start doing this based on what I'm telling you. Look for a fitness trainer that's going to help you do this. But it's the idea of doing a burst of exercise in a way that you are working to failure in a sweet spot, so that you actually force your body to adapt, to grow, to actually be better, that doesn't then require you to exhaust yourself by doing it for an hour or two. Because different parts of your body will actually get exhausted at different levels, at different tiers. It's a matter of what are your goals and then working those particular items to accomplish that. But in that program for 10X, you're not working out 7 days a week. You're not working out for 4 hours, 3 days a week either. In essence, you're working out half an hour for 2 days a week. Eventually they bump you up to an extra 15 minutes on 2 other days a week, but you still are working with then 3 days of rest and recovery. It's really important that you are setting this up, this system for you, so that you're actually working out the areas of your body so that you build in the relaxation recovery phase as well, so that you do get stronger, so you do get more flexible, so you do increase endurance because of the way that you've actually practiced that system.
And we also, knowing that we will rest after a while, it gives us more energy because we know that the rest is going to be there. So we push ourselves further. And not only that, but having a goal as well. Like knowing that I need to reach that. And knowing that after that goal, you have some rest, that is good as well because it stimulates ourselves to go even further and do things like that. A quick patch up on this idea of on Jiu-Jitsu, going further. For example, I decided to work passing guard. That is something Jiu-Jitsu called the guard, which is our legs, basically. So I decided to work passing guard. And when I started working, I decided to do it in a way that requires a lot of my legs. And in the beginning, when I decided to work that, I would do that for 2-3 minutes. And in the single fight, my legs would just didn't want to hold the weight of my body anymore because I didn't have that practice. I didn't have that thing. And today, Michael, today I don't even feel. I go several fights there working with my legs. It's like the crouching tiger, I believe, in Kung Fu. It's that position of you are mounting the horse, like you are as if you were sitting, but without the bench. And then you are moving there because you are using your knees to push the leg of your opponent. Sorry about that. Push the leg of your opponents away. There is a lot of things. But the idea is that it requires a lot of your thighs. But then today it is in a level of practice that I don't even feel anymore. That was what I was talking about, expanding our comfort zone and just reaching more about it. What do you think about our talking about the techniques of relaxation?
I think now would probably be a good time to share some practical tools here, so that we're not just talking in theory. You're talking so far. You've talked about in jiu-jitsu what kind of you practice, but what are these ways that we relax? We also mentioned one of the other ones, which is meditation. For me, I think is actually one of the best ways that we do relax our mind and body and allow those thoughts that come up. And there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different techniques of meditation out there. And I think that each of them has its value. And it's a matter of, like in all things, and what I will pretty much always say is that find the practice that works best for you. For me personally, the one I do the most often is the 6 days meditation from Vishen Lakhiani. It is really the software engineer's version of meditation because he hacked them all together and brought the best of 6 different worlds together, which I very much appreciate. For others, it's transcendental meditation. For others, it's more of a tantric meditation. There's lots of different flavors here with different intents.
And about the 6-phase meditation of Vishen Lakhiani, that relates very much with the Life Oozes interface that we talked about. It's like an interface. He created an interface. We don't need to understand why it works, but it goes through some processes that are very healthy for our mind, and we just need to use that interface. It's ready for us to use.
So some of the other things, so meditation tends to be more of a mindfulness exercise, and there is actually some distinction between a meditation versus mindfulness. And as you are researching this for the tools that you're going to find for yourself, you'll find out which ones work better for you. For some, it is actually being that mindfulness of connecting with your mind and your body together. Some of the others is breath work. In some ways, you would call that a different form of meditation when you're focusing on your breath. If it's Wim Hof, if it is deep breath work, if there's yoga breathing practices as well, that also is another way to work with your breath. So I know with WildFit, one of the breathing techniques that they talk about is the 5x5. So it's basically box breathing. Breathe in for 5, hold for 5, out for 5, hold for 5, and do that 5 times. So that is enough to calm your nervous system. There's others where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, you let out for 8. It's supposed to be really good for relaxing into sleep and potentially moving into a state of lucid dreaming. So it's telling you, giving your body a different message. And if you want to practice this, if you just hyperventilate yourself and breathe, really feel what happens in your body is going to react to how you're breathing. Because in some ways, it's almost like that's the cueing signal between different parts of your body, is that your cardiovascular system is reacted because there's something to run away from or something to be afraid of. And the rest of your body then reacts of, oh, we're running right now. Let's get the systems ready, power on the running legs because this is going to be hard.
This is very important. Our body receives signals, and we need to be aware of that. Sometimes we send signals that are not what we want to send, and then we start to feel some anxiety, and we think, what is that? And that is something happening, and then we connect the anxiety to what is happening, and that is a whole mess in our minds.
And if you just observe what Bruno did, for those of you who are watching us rather than listening to us, when he did that, his words got a lot faster, his eyes got a lot bigger, his eyebrows raised, and his cadence, he started moving and was much more agitated. All of those were signs that he was triggering something in his body. So when we're mindful of this happening, we then learn to do the things that allow our body to relax, which sometimes is slowing how we're speaking, taking longer, deeper breaths, because many times we breathe up here in the top part of our chest instead of in the bottom third of our lungs, which is where we actually take in more oxygen, is in the bottom part of our lungs rather than the top. So even just taking 2 or 3 deep breaths to the point where your belly expands is enough to trigger your body to say, oh, we don't have to run right now. We can actually slow down, relax, recover, and rebuild some of the things that we've been breaking down for the last hour, day, week, month, decade. That simple practice alone is a huge component of relaxation.
And in this moment that we relax and that we just take this deep breath, we send the signal, like Michael just said, to our body, everything's okay. And we actually process better. So many solutions might come from this. But sometimes I'm having a challenge and I don't usually stop very much, but when I stop, it's very inconvenient because now you are relaxing and then the solution comes up. So I have systems like in my cell phone, I have Notion. So sometimes I'm relaxed. I just take a time to breathe. And when something comes up, I quickly get my phone, just take note and continue there. I experienced a moment like this. I was very anxious about this space because there were so many things going on and so many problems right in my face. And then after a long day of work, me and my partner, we sat down in the front there. And I even say to myself, like, I wanted to say something to him. And then I spoke to myself, like, no, let's just shut up for a moment and be quiet. I deserve it. And then in that moment, after some 5 minutes of just not saying anything, it just became clear to me that the problems, they were there because they were like in my face. But then I realized that despite the fact that there were so many problems right in front of my face, they were not such a big challenge to solve. They would be solved eventually. It wouldn't take too long. And after solving that problem, it was like taking a peek over the wall and being, I wouldn't even say the wall, I would say the rubble, the boxes and the things to fix. And I was like, oh, and visualizing the place clean. And today we have a much cleaner space and much better. because of this moment of relaxation. And this moment of relaxation was very important because I was coming from 3 days of very intense stress on all the challenges that we have to solve. And now most of these challenges are already solved. And in that moment of relaxation, I recovered the energy, and it was like 5 minutes. In my case, it was a psychological thing. And in 5 minutes, I was like, oh, okay, I can handle this. We can handle this.
Also to this, whenever I think of relaxation, it also is a fair amount about less action in that moment. So that is another way that I think about this idea of relaxation, is the idea of listening rather than doing for a little. And because in the doing, yes, we do gain leverage, we do gain ground, we actually move further towards our results when we're in action. And however, us, when we've been acting for a long time, taking that moment to check in with our senses. What are we smelling? What are we seeing? What are we hearing? What are we tasting? And what are we feeling? And really know what that sense is. We talked a few episodes ago about savoring the experience and making sure that we actually get those in there as well, is knowing where we're at. Like we mentioned before with the analogy of getting in your car and driving and not sure you're driving in the right direction. Sometimes you need to pull over and take stock of where you're at and take inventory of where you're at as well. And in slowing down, we can realize and record kind of what are we up against. Maybe that's a mental list that we're creating. Maybe it's we're using a digital notebook like Notion, or a handwritten journal of just taking stock of where we're at. And in doing so, we actually make those things, those thoughts, those ideas, those emotions more concrete. So then we can either choose that, yes, that's truly what my reality is, or we can say, that's my reality for now, but it's going to be a different reality in the future as I learn to resolve some of those challenges that I'm up against. And in doing so, we really slow down so then we can speed up. We take that moment of relaxation so we can build up more energy to then take on the next step.
And if I can share some of the tools that I have learned in my experience, it's basically what Michael said. I just had an effort to deconstruct a little things. For example, I realized that in our meditations, they go through a similar process where we get a comfortable position. Our posture is very, very important. Our column being right, it's very important. Why is that important? I try to look for it, and then I realize it is a matter of breath. Because if our posture is bad, like this or something like that, we don't realize, but there is a tube there in our lungs, inside our body, where air needs to pass by. And if our posture is bad, then this tube is like this, and then we are not oxygenating our brains, our body, as much as it needed. Sometimes the way inside our body is closed. So that's the thing about the posture. Keeping a nice posture so the way is clear for the air to come in and to come out without stress. And then after getting a nice posture, they talk about the deep breath, and there is a thing on the breath. When we breathe in, we feel our body. We recognize our body, how it is. Is there some tension there? And then we point like there's a tension here, maybe a pain in the head, maybe my knee is hurting. And we breathe out and we try to relax, expel those tensions, like putting them out. And this is very good. This is a nice process. Feeling our body. And I heard that in several times, like when I was consuming content from, how are they called? The guys that teach how to approach women. I don't remember. Dating coaches. Pickup artists, yeah, which is a polemic name somehow. Pickup artists, I don't like this name because they are like, it's better. There is a channel that they call themselves Real Social Dynamics, and I think that social dynamics reflects better what it's done. But it was an evolution of the industry, because in the beginning they saw themselves as pickup artists, as really, and it was not very healthy. when I get in contact with this industry in the beginning, it was something that it evolved, it came a long way. And it's necessary to recognize that the thing evolved and it's much healthier today. But when I was, the pickup artists, they were like, if you get nervous when you approach someone, spread your fingers, your toes, and deep breath. And while you deep breath, feel your feet. So there is something there because several sources, even those guys that are not on meditation and things like that, mindfulness, they are talking about feeling your body when you breathe in and relaxing, releasing tension when we breathe out. Another thing that is very helpful is to have the idea our minds works into places. So we can create a place of relaxation because our minds doesn't realize what is real and what is not. If we visualize ourselves going to that place of relaxation, it will not exactly know that we are not in fact there. It will behave as if we indeed were. So I like to have this theater, Michael. It's a big theater, dark, very comfortable. And these are things that we build ourselves. So I say to myself, I'm in this theater and I describe the theater. And every time I go there, I describe it further and further until I get more and more familiar. And it's easier for me to get into that place. So there is this recognition. And the shares are very comfortable and there is a lot of things we can create this space. And then that is the counting down. Like some meditations, they count down from 3 to 1, and each number they are like go more relaxed and things like that. Some meditations they count from 10 to 1, and taking this time to just focus on this count is very important and very useful. And Vishen Lakiani even talks about the 3 to 1 count. It's like he says, visualize like you are in your theater of your mind and then you see the screen. Visualize the number 3 appearing in 3 different ways. Like one is hand drawn, the other one is like a digit, 3 different ways. And you just see 3 times, and you say to yourself 2 3 times, 1 3 times. And after this process, we are more relaxed. And to close on the things that I know that might be good for relaxation, there is a very good exercise to clear our minds, which is done in the theater. We imagine this theater, we imagine going there, we imagine our chair very comfortable. We create a feeling of anticipation, maybe something good's about to happen. We are in the theater after all. And to clear our mind, to eliminate competing thoughts. That's the right word. Eliminating competing thoughts. We just think about something, an object like a bike, and then we see that bike on the screen, and the moment that the image appears, we erase it and we leave it blank. Our objective is to leave the screen blank. So we think a bike, a ball, a bat, a chair, a staircase, and you just go and you go to the next in the moment that we clear the screen and it keeps white again. And then we just leave the screen white for a while. And one thing that I remember when thinking about the screen that you mentioned before, Michael, is multitasking. The idea is that we can do several things at the same time, but our brain is just doing one. Consciousness, the thing that is processing, is just doing one. The idea is that like a computer, we can be very fast into changing things that we are doing. So we think that we are doing several things, but in fact, when we don't go to the second task, the first one was paused. And that's why Michael mentioned that when we leave a task unfinished, it keeps consuming energy because it's on pause. Until we give the signal and we understand to our minds, this is done. And that's why celebration is so important. We do a little bit celebration, yay, a high five with a friend that participated on the quest, a booyah in the games, booyah. This is very important, and it keeps our mind knowing, I don't need to worry about that anymore. It's delivered and it moves.
So a couple of things I want to highlight in what you said, because each of those is a fantastic tool for relaxation. So one thing is that the counting thing, it's got to be down, not up. Because here's the problem when we count up is we don't know when we're going to stop, which builds anxiety in us. In general, when we're counting down, we generally know that at 0, we're done. So that's why counting down is so important for relaxation. because we know that we see an end in sight, and when we get there, we can check that off, that we don't need to keep that timer anymore, that countdown anymore, which I really like. And this idea of eliminating competing thoughts too is being able to start with a clean slate is also really important, so we don't have that hanging on, that we don't have that trail that we're leaving. And a lot of these things that we're talking about really is the idea of self-hypnosis. It's a matter of putting ourselves into a mindset by doing tasks like tapping or havening or breath work or meditation or what have you, to really hypnotize ourselves to reset. I'm in a relaxed state right now. I'm letting anxiety go. I'm focusing on ease and grace, is really coming back to that practice we talked about before. If your practice is to be in a relaxed state, that's more often going to come out in a potentially stressful state because you've been practicing coming from a relaxed state of mind. And working within this in a way that kind of brings you back to your grounding space. I love the idea of this, the theater being your grounding space. The loci method, the ability of us to remember things better based on location, is also really key for relaxation. So as an example, a space that you go to that a traumatic event happened, going back there for relaxation tends to be counter to what you're trying to accomplish. So any time that you can create either a mental space, a visualized space that you can take yourself to during meditation, during a mindfulness practice, during that stressful moment, the beach, whatever that is, fantastic. But building also similarly a relaxation space in your environment somewhere. It may be just a chair in the corner with a picture in it that you can actually get yourself to that space, and then use that for relaxation only. That is the focus of that area. You don't need a huge yoga meditation retreat space in order to pull this off. It's a matter of having that space that you go to that is your space to ground. So that location, because our brains, as Bruno mentioned, are really wired to location, because that's how we knew where we were not safe. That's where we knew where water was. That's where we knew where food was, is by location. And to the fact that people can build huge mind palaces of places based on locality to remember where things are and to work with that space. So each of those is a fantastic tool, and doing some of that work. And once again, each of these is a tool that can work for us, practicing them to find the right one that works for you to bring you back into that relaxation space. If anybody here has ever worked with a therapist, doing something with EMDR is another psychological tool that's used by certified practitioners to build that grounding space, that space that is your sanctuary that you go to when stressful situations come up, which then leads us to sometimes we don't always have at hand or even a way to build these tools for relaxation because they're just too far out of reach. It's an opportunity to ask for help. If that is a mindfulness coach, if that's a psychologist, if it's a psychiatrist, if it's a hypnotist, someone who's actually skilled in doing this that can then teach you new tools, please ask for help if this is a challenge for you. Me personally, I do this through vision work. I do this through the life book process, which is a lot of this preparation, which builds in the balance of relaxation into my schedule. But there are other practitioners out there who really help get you over that hump if you're struggling with ways to relax, and can help you discover the best tools for you.
So with that said, I believe that we can wrap it up talking about relaxation. And it was such a good conversation, Michael. There are some things that we can branch out of this and talk more. We talked about self-hypnosis, which is something that is in the edges of what is known in the society. I don't believe many people are aware of what hypnosis really is and things like that, but it's actually a great tool. And every guided meditation is some sort of hypnosis. It's a process of hypnosis. But we can talk more about that in the future. And guys, everybody, and everybody that is watching, thank you for watching. If you like this content, hit the like button and subscribe. Don't forget, and leave your opinion as well.
So we really do enjoy having these conversations. And for those of you who have joined us along this path, we really appreciate all your feedback that you've given. And if there are any questions or areas where you'd like us to expand and explore a little bit and bring that back to you and potentially share our experience with this, or maybe we'll go off and do research about it, please leave that in the comments here. We'd love to get your feedback on that. And if there's something that you have a challenging view, we want to know that too. It helps us grow whenever we can really delve into this for ourselves. Because even for us, we are on our own journey. This is as much for us to record how far we've come and hopefully share that wisdom with you. And we're open to the wisdom that you've gained in your life as well, because each of us want to elevate our best. And we do that through community, through collaboration, through co-elevation. So thank you very much for your time. My name is Michael Danklefs of Elevate Your Best.
And I'm Bruno Martins, and thank you. See you guys next week. See you all next week. Bye-bye.